Welcome to Grimora, where we take you into a world of terrifying and mysterious stories, both real and fictional. Before we begin, find a quiet place and get ready to enjoy today's story. Let's go. 69 Days Underground, The Miracle of the 33. On August 5, 2010, a routine shift deep inside the San José copper-gold mine in northern Chile turned into the kind of disaster that nightmares are made of. A sudden collapse sealed the main tunnel and swallowed the passage back to sunlight. Down below, nearly half a mile under the Atacama Desert, a group of miners went from ordinary men at work to prisoners of rock and darkness. This is the story of how 33 men survived for 69 days in an underground refuge, how families, a nation, and the world waited, how engineers and rescuers from around the globe raced to bore a single shaft to freedom, and how a slender, metallic capsule called Fénix carried each man back to the sky. The San José mine sat in the Atacama region, a remote, rocky landscape carved by centuries of mining. On that afternoon in early August, more than 30 miners were working when a massive cave-in buried the main tunnel. One man escaped to the surface. 33 did not. For hours, then days, everyone feared the worst. Families gathered at the hillside above the mine, forming a ragged encampment that would come to be called Camp Hope. The world's attention would follow them in the weeks to come, but in the first days there was only waiting and uncertainty. 17 days after the collapse, an almost cinematic moment changed everything. A narrow exploratory borehole, sent down through the rubble by rescue crews, retrieved a scrap of paper. On it, a simple message in Spanish: Estamos bien en el refugio los 33. We are well in the refuge, the 33. The note proved the impossible. Not only were they alive, they had found an emergency shelter and were gathered together. This single line transformed the mission from a recovery to a rescue. What followed was a frantic, multifaceted operation. Drilling teams, government agencies, private companies, and international experts converged on Copiapó. It would take weeks of planning, experimentation, and risk to create a path that could carry men to the surface. Imagine darkness so deep that your world becomes a single small pool of light, the smell of diesel and dust, the steady drip of water. Rations were tiny. Each man survived on the strictest economy of food and water. They burned matches to read. They rationed cigarettes. They recorded messages for their families. They kept a schedule to stay sane. Leadership came from within. Foreman Luis Urzua kept the group focused, instituting votes on decisions and dividing work. He and the men converted desperation into routine, repairing tools, recycling water, and conserving energy, all to survive another day. They also turned to ritual. Prayer, music, and humor became lifelines. They celebrated birthdays in the dark. They shared the few comforts they had: a single radio, a pack of peanuts. And when the drill made contact, the first transmissions from the surface were greeted like a miracle. Rescuers tried multiple drilling approaches simultaneously, each with different rigs and techniques, because they had no time to waste. 3 major boreholes were attempted, 2 parallel efforts, and a final, narrow rescue shaft. At the surface, engineers built a slender capsule, the Fénix, modeled on older mine escape devices but reinforced and fitted with oxygen, harnesses, and a communication system. NASA contributed engineering advice and medical monitoring techniques to help prepare the miners and mitigate the health risks of sudden re-exposure to atmospheric pressure. The capsule measured roughly the diameter of a coffin, but its arrival meant something no rig or calculation could convey. It was the promise of air, of news, of an end. On October 12th and 13th, 2010, the world watched in real time as the first miner was lowered into the Fénix capsule and slowly winched to the surface. One by one, 33 men were brought out, each ride taking around 15 to 20 minutes. Greeted by doctors, family members, and Chilean President Sebastián Pinera. On October 13th, after 69 days, the rescue was complete. The images were iconic: dusty, Blinking men lifted into sunlight, tears and hugs, a nation and the world exhaling together. It was not a cinematic spectacle alone. It was the result of months of drilling, the collaboration of nations and private firms, and a relentless commitment to bring those men home. In the immediate aftermath, the miners became international symbols, guests of honor in stadiums, interview subjects on magazine covers, protagonists in movies and books. But deeper questions remained. How had such a collapse occurred? Investigations pointed to negligence and safety lapses at the mine. It forced Chile and other mining nations to re-examine regulations, enforcement, and worker safety. Private donations and government funds helped cover the rescue's enormous cost, and reforms aimed to prevent a repetition of the tragedy. For the men themselves, recovery was not simply physical. After the global attention faded, many faced health, psychological, and financial challenges. Some found new purpose in advocacy and public life. Others returned to work. The shared experience forged a bond between them that cameras could capture, but time could never erase. There are obvious reasons this story gripped the world: the human drama, the suspense, the astonishing outcome. But there is another reason. It reminds us of two truths. First, that human beings can endure far more than we imagine when they anchor themselves to routine, leadership, and small acts of kindness. Second, that when communities come together, families, engineers, governments, and nations, ingenuity can transform sorrow into salvation. This was not a perfect story. It exposed failures and risks, but it also showed what is possible when hands and minds work together across borders and disciplines to save lives. Years later, the memory of those 69 days lives on. In books like Deep Down Dark, in films, in museum displays, and in the scars and smiles of the men who lived it. Their rescue was a miracle of engineering, a triumph of human will, and a lesson in humility. The San José mine collapse tested them, but it did not break them. And in the end, 33 men stepped from darkness into light, one by one, to a world that had not given up on them.